We're still on Proverbs, but I think last week we finished chapter 10. We'll enter chapter 11. These next several chapters are more of the same. These are God's instructions to you through Solomon and some others, when you get to the end of Proverbs, on what makes a wise person and what their attributes and actions and decisions are. So we're going to continue on. We're going to play a game. It's called Solomon Says. We're going to revise some of the rules of engagement. So I realize that we're going through some of these fairly quickly because I'm stating them. I'm asking you if you have an opinion or a thought, and if not, we're going on. If we need to circle back and touch one because the thought comes later, that's perfectly fine. We can fall backwards into the chapters. We can move forward. Proverbs strike when you need them. Not when you think you are ready, but when you truly are ready to receive. And I can make that argument for a lot of Scripture, but it is particularly true in Proverbs. You can read the same chapter and get nothing out of it until the moment you need it. And then all of a sudden, I'll call it the Spirit. Something will touch you and it will say, you see those words? They mean something. What do they mean to you? And then it all comes clear. So, we're going to look at chapter 11. Is that small enough for you?
It is.
It is. Go ahead, take a moment. You can read ahead. There's no cheating when it comes to Scripture reading, other than if you cheat yourself and don't do it. A lot of Proverbs chapter 11, and Solomon writes the same way we all do. He gets on a theme or a topic and then sticks with that for a few verses, and then something in that last verse will transition him into the next, and it is a gentle winding stream of knowledge and understanding of how people work in their relationship with God and how we are supposed to be. So, the Lord detests dishonest scales, but accurate weights find favor with him. You ever been cheated? Why are you still over there? Come join us. You can leave your stuff there. I know you're saving your place for later. You can leave your stuff. Have you ever been cheated? You ever felt cheated? This is not about you, but every time I go to a car place, man, it hurts my wallet, something fierce. I want to feel cheated, even though I know they've done good work, and it's okay. The reason I said that is because that's your profession. Don't worry about that. It's the car's fault. My cars are wonderful. It's not my car's problem. The problem is that's right, a skill costs a specific amount of money, right? And it is a skill. If you want to find out how much you desire it, work on your car yourself. And then you're going to go pay twice as much because you don't have the skill. It's not just wrenches and nuts and bolts anymore, is it? I mean, it's not. Now it's electronics and all kinds of everything else, right? And if I rip the electronics out so that I can get into the nuts and bolts I'm comfortable with, none of it works. So good luck with that. But are they supposed to cheat me? No. Remember, Proverbs are about you. So, in your dealings with others, and it's not just in business, don't cheat people. If you cheat people, what do you become known as? A cheat, right? And then you wonder why business fades away or your friendships tend to die early, and it's all over. When he says with him, who does he mean? A lot of times when Solomon is talking about a third person him, it's the Lord. Because what is Proverbs about? It's about your relationship with God. And only after that, your relationship with others. I say it at least once a week. What's the definition of a righteous man? Someone who does God's will even when it runs counter to what they want. That's what God defines as righteous. That's it. Whom do you serve? All right, verse 2. When pride comes, then comes disgrace. But with humility comes wisdom. I like being humble. It's my second best feature. No issues with that? Everybody likes to be humble? Scripture never speaks of pride as a positive, ever, with one exception. Go ahead.
It's so handy. It's right here.
What do you got?
Not everybody probably likes to be humble. Not everybody's good at it.
Everybody likes to be the lowest?
Humble. Not everybody's good at it.
Not everybody's good at being humble.
It's an art, right? It is as much art as science. Because there's a time in which we should be humble and there's a time in which we should be not. But that brings up the second verse, right? Why do you think he immediately transitions into pride?
Because humility is the opposite.
Yes. Say that again.
Humility is the opposite of pride.
Right, humility is the opposite of pride. And we tend to overcharacterize things. So if you're not humble, you must be prideful. There's a lot of ground in between there, right? But I'll make the statement I started with again. Only once in Scripture is pride ever mentioned as a positive. And it's by Paul. And Paul doesn't say he's proud. Paul doesn't say that the people he's talking about should be proud. Paul says, and this is verbatim, you can look it up somewhere, I am proud for you to others. So get the full definition of that. Do you have a friend that when you talk to people about, you say, man, I love this dude. He's wonderful. I enjoy having him for a friend, a coach, a teacher, a mentor, a brother, whatever. You're proud of your relationship with them. You're proud about them. You're proud for them on their behalf. But that's not self-pride. Every time Scripture mentions self-pride in Scripture, and it's only mentioned in two ways, self-pride and then proud of others, it's a negative. We're not supposed to be proud. And I've said this from the pulpit before. What does God say about his only son? I'm sorry, what I hear it whispered. Go ahead. Right, that is Scripture. And that is Ecclesiastes or never mind. We'll get there. What does the Lord say about his son? Behold my son, in whom I am most pleased. That's the best compliment he can give Jesus. He says he's pleased about them because it has so many other different connotations, right? Because pleased with him implies that Christ's work is acceptable. Christ himself as a person is acceptable. He does the things that I would have my son do as my son. If you've got a son, you know what that means. Or you should. Or you should think about it until you do. Don't get with me about it. I don't have time. Not for that particular question. So, never pride. Never pride. And that's why he writes what he writes. When pride comes, then comes disgrace, but with humility comes wisdom. So we should practice humility. I think Moses was a little too humble. Moses' humility is part of what got him into trouble, because when he strikes the rock, he suddenly swings all the way to the other side, and he's proud of it. He says, I brought that water out. It's exactly the kind of mistake I would expect an overly humble person to make when they swing, because they swing so far. Yes, ma'am.
Proverbs 16:18.
16:18, we're going to get there. Thank you. So, God talks about scales a lot, and it's about a balance of scales. Most of the things that I can be prideful about, I should give the credit to someone else for, whether it's a skill set, an understanding, or anything. Somebody taught me, or I picked it up somewhere from someone else through observation. There's nothing new under the sun, right? That's Proverbs 2. We're going to get there. That's that one's Ecclesiastes. There you go. All right. The integrity of the upright guides them, but the unfaithful are destroyed by their duplicity. So we're still on this concept of human behaviors.
Something that's caught my attention here is that most of, and I looked at several ahead, most of this has to do with man's perception by other men. And so far, except in the very first verse, does it say anything about God's expectation of, or I should say man's expectation to meet God's expectation? So far, this is going to happen to you in society. This is going to happen to you in relating to other people. It's all going to fail.
Yes, yes.
But I think for me, for us, our standard ought to be, when I talk to God, I can say, I've been honest in this way, I've dealt in this way, and so forth.
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
No, the concept of how we talk to God is wild. And we could do a whole series of that, of how it's displayed in Scripture. Because the one most people go to is the guy who beats his chest and says how much he sucks. But he does it with humility. And so Christ says, that's about right. Because he understands his position between him and God in the same way Job would.
But sometimes he's beating his chest falsely.
Yes.
And that's my point.
Right.
Is that I think we sometimes try to present ourselves to other human beings as righteous.
And you're correct. That's what all these first 6 or 7 verses are about our interactions with other people, who we are and who we display.
But our standard still ought to be what God's expectation is.
It should be. It should be. But I fail. I fail the Lord, right? I fail him, and in failing him, I fail myself.
I think that's probably the most difficult thing about being a Christian is that we do some of these things well, while other ones we completely fall on our face, which leads people to say, hypocrite, and things of that nature, which is the difficult part of it, I think.
So you know how to get rid of the hypocrite accusation?
Ignore it.
No, that's the worst way. Own it. Own it. Not in a prideful way, because pride's always wrong. Yes, you're absolutely right, I did that. As a Christian, I do need work, and I accept that I need work. If you do that, it takes all of the ammunition they just placed underneath you to blow you up, and it evaporates.
That applies to every fault.
Yeah. I have learned to be very quick to own my mistakes. And in my professional life, it has saved my career. And I can make the case that it has become the foundation of my career, so that when anyone comes to me to ask me what's wrong with something, and everything that's wrong is my fault, always, then I own it. So I tease my bosses when they're new. The first time they walk into my office, I say, sir, what has Ray Fuller screwed up that needs you in his office? And it disarms them. They're like, whoa, okay. Well, this. Okay. All right, I got that now. Thank you. Sorry we made that mistake. We'll do better. You may go. I have to go fix this thing. And then we're running, and that sets a tone for our relationship. And so I own. So at times in my career, I've overly owned a mistake. And I don't know if that hurt me or not, but I do know that other people would come to me later and say, that wasn't yours. I'm like, shut up, get out of here. It's not up to you what I own. Now that person over there who made the mistake, I also own. Yeah. and so Sometimes there's a method to the madness, right? But, you sacrifice yourself for others, and they will tend to sacrifice themselves for you when you need them. The art of that is knowing when to need them. The integrity of the upright guides them, but the unfaithful are destroyed by their duplicity. I would hope that we all have people in our lives that we look toward that do that. I would hope that once we understand the definition of righteousness, we begin to use that as a description of people. And when you find someone in your life who is as righteous as we can probably expect a person to be, that you attach yourself to them. And so I always tell people, I'll give you 2 pieces of advice. The first one you must ignore. The second one will be close. Because when you tell me something and I am protective or caring about you, my first response will always be violent retaliation on the subject. You're like, hey, this guy cheated me out of this money. I'm like, get in the car, dude. I got a tire iron. Let's go get him. Bad advice. The next one is, well, can we survive the accident? Can you distance yourself from the person so it never happens again? And can you learn from this? Much better advice. But I know me, and so I have to make that caveat. I don't know if that qualifies as righteous, but it qualifies as knowing me and who I am and working on that. Wealth is worthless in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death. That one should be written down somewhere in your heart. That is a proof text for us about this world versus the next. If you want to give it its full weight and value. What world do you live in? I like the Old Testament way of describing the second coming of Christ, the day of wrath. God has wrath in the Old Testament. The righteousness of the blameless makes their paths straight, but the wicked are brought down by their own wickedness. Good things happen to good people. Bad things happen to bad people. Are you surprised about either? We're surprised when bad things happen to good people, right? We're angry when good things happen to bad people. But you're fairly ambivalent about good things happening to good people and bad things happening to bad people, right? That's sort of the expected outcome. Am I wrong? I expect people who get into trouble and commit crimes to go to jail. Not surprised. I expect people that treat others fairly with respect and dignity and do the right things to have the right things happen to them. That's the way the world should work. Solomon is just reiterating that. For consideration. So every day when you get up, what do you choose? Every day you get up, and what do you choose? It's a choice. Do you guys just get up and blindly wander into traffic and work and wonder why you're continuously frustrated by people who put violent turns in the road in front of you because you aren't operating with any anticipatory emotional response to the day? Is that who you guys are? Every day I get up and I choose violence. Know yourself. It's ever present in my mind. And then I have to decide that I will not be that today. And I tend to put on an overly optimistic facade, and it drives me through my day so I can accept problems. But I'm a child of violence. I was born into it. I was raised from it. I've grown out of it, and the scars are still with me, and they will be forever. And know me. The first person I should know is me. I get up every morning. I've told Denise this before. Some mornings I get up, I'm like, man, I feel violent today. And if I don't control that, I will look for the opportunity to be violent. And I don't mean that I have to just physically walk around the house crushing things and breaking things. You can be violent with your tongue in ways that are extremely damaging to your relationships. And it is the same. Have you ever been so hurt by somebody's words that you were never the same? Or that your relationship with them was never the same? So, you're being asked. What are you doing every day? How do you get up? Do you have a get-up ritual? Is it like just stumble around the house until I sleepily get in my car and show up at work, and then 45 minutes later I'm alert? Huh? Stumbling around is the ritual? All right, cut that out. Do better. Life's easier if you get up and you think about who you want to be and who you are. That's the real power of those daily meditations. I'm not a fan of them. I'm not a fan of cherry-picking Scripture and then throwing it on a window for me to look at all day long without understanding and context. But I am a fan of the fact that meditating on the fact that I'm a Christian can drive my behaviors to be more Christian every morning. Was that 6? Did we do that? The righteousness of the upright delivers them, but the unfaithful are trapped by evil desires. Have you ever met somebody who just chose violence? That was their only option in every situation? Anger? I have. Once I realized who they were, I started seeing them in more places throughout the world. It wasn't until later that I realized I should stop going to those places and I could stop seeing them. But there's always one angry drunk in every small town bar. Always. And the minute you find him, leave. Because his happy hour definition is different than yours, and it might include a fight. Now, I don't know why you guys were going to bars, but there you were. So then I learned to stop going to bars, and life got a lot better. Hope placed in mortals die with them. All the promise of their power comes to nothing. You see it every day. In whom do you place your faith? At some point in a conversation with non-Christians about Christ, that might be a fair question. In whom do you place your faith? And if you place it in people, they will always fail you. That's the history of Scripture. That's the history of man. Leaders die. The morals and values of a specific time fade, and the leaders who come behind them are never as great. And so a wonderful group of people who developed the Constitution and the balance of powers in the Republic and the principles of democracy. And before they even died, they were replaced by such lesser men that we had a civil war. Now that's overly simplifying a lot of American history there. But you have to be careful of who you place your faith in. Is it okay to have some faith in man? Huh? I agree. I think you must. We must have hope. Because I struggle with that. My life experience teaches me that people cannot be trusted other than to do me harm. That has driven most of my adult life until I was 40. Because that was my life experience. And then I met a few men who, you know, as the capstone event of my life, of my wife introducing me to Christ, who taught me that some men could be trusted. I intuitively trust women. I have never been hurt by a woman in my life. All the men in my life were always angry and violent. So I do not trust the breed. Each and every one of you is circumspect, by the way. But I try to believe, And my Christian brothers have taught me a lot about that. That I can trust men of a certain type. Yes, ma'am.
We need to be able to trust, but remember that we're all human.
My heart says yes. My experience says no.
And our ability to forgive.
Yeah, I'm working on that.
Forgiveness is a huge portion of trust.
Yeah, I'm working on that.
And learning how to say no.
Learning how to say no came very easy. The more men I meet that I do trust and that have proven to be trustworthy, the better that enables me to trust others. So the question for you, as a Christian male, in these encounters with other men who do not trust you, is to ask yourself why. What's going on in their life or has gone on in their life that made them who they are? And then maybe you can find some things to discuss with them. And in order to trust people, in order for people to trust you, what do you have to be? There you go. That's right. She just turned it into an adverb. So trustworthy. When given the opportunity to be trusted, be trusted. Throughout Scripture, we are expected to make good on our commitments, make good on our promises, make no promises we will not keep, and then be honest about that in our relationship with others in the Lord. I'm not required to take every sucker bet that comes my way. In fact, some of them I'm specifically supposed to turn away, as we read in the first 9 chapters of Proverbs about the kind of things and people we don't want to associate with. Wisdom is the discernment to know when and to say no. The righteous person is rescued from troubles, and it falls on the wicked instead. This is the sucker's bet. Are you guys familiar with that? Okay. It's the Las Vegas street name for what is called the bigger fool fallacy. So, if I take on a bet, or I take on an act or a debt that operates under the bigger fool theory, the only value in that bet is that there's a dumber guy somewhere else in the world than me, and I can sell it to him for more. By the way, that's crypto, but anyway. You can make money on it, don't get me wrong. Just know what it is. It's speculation. And speculation operates under the bigger fool fallacy. So as a righteous person, knowing that God doesn't want me to take hold of these debts that way, what do I do? What were we just talking about? Saying no. I say no. Because bigger fool fallacy bets require a bigger fool. And now I'm taking advantage of someone's stupidity. What is a fool as defined in Scripture? Someone who operates under the principles of the society in which they're born, not related to the wishes of God. People who are always looking for the next $1 million to make overnight. They're too impatient to invest wisely in themselves or others. We're not just talking about money. And so I'm supposed to be able to see those kind of things coming. If it's snowing and icy outside, and my friend calls me up and he says, "We need to go driving," what do I say? I go, "Yeah!" No, no, because what are the likelihood of an accident? I would say 100%. Nobody else is out. You're good. There you go. That's the first counter. When I say, "Are you crazy?"
It's called training. That's right, training.
So confession. I used to purposefully take my Z out hydroplaning in the rain. Oh, yeah. So I could get seconds, because seconds matter when you're hydroplaning of experience. And that was the justification. There's nobody out on I-70. And there wasn't. That doesn't make it not stupid. It was stupid. Because a smart man would pull over in the rain when he realizes that his car is going to hydroplane and just wait it out. A fool decided he just wanted to go out and get in it. And by the grace of God, I was never seriously injured. But I have been totally sideways, front wheels pointed the direction I want to go when I stop hydroplaning for many seconds on I-70. It was dumb. I should have left that to the next person, to the wicked person.
So, Ray, you're admitting that you, as the example of the standard human being, that we are all fools some of the time.
I appreciate you only saying some of the time. I'll go with a little more than half, depending upon how it is presented. I'm an adrenaline addict and an adventure seeker for new places and experiences. I overly trust in my own capabilities and my physical abilities, and that is a deadly combination for a man to have.
But you're a victim of also your upbringing, and that was the environment you were in.
Yeah, we were thrill seekers. Most young men are?
I think so.
Yeah. It's tough to learn control as a man, right? Yeah. How old were you when you learned control? Look, he's just making up a number.
35.
35. That's a good young age. You could live half that again because you're wise. Well into my 40s, late 40s, early 50s, maybe late 50s. I'm late 50s now.
My wife has given me a look that I'm still working on it.
Right? So acknowledgement is the first step to recovery, right? And so, know it. Know yourself. I don't know, ladies, do you feel that way too when you're young? Are you thrill seekers? Yes. She's smiling. She's like, I'm not telling you any of my secrets, Ray Fuller. Yes. Yes. So when did you learn?
Probably when I had children.
Okay.
Having children changes everything. Suddenly your mortality is so real.
Not so much for a guy. I wrote that away with, I kid you not, I wrote that away with life insurance so I could continue to accept risk in my profession.
I'll have to assume that at 80.
So, yeah, children change everything? It's a bummer, huh? Good answer. She said no. They do change everything for women. They change some things for men. Ladies know this. It's just who we are. We're allowed to be different. We expect some coaching, teaching, and mentoring when it comes to those things. With their mouths, the godless destroy their neighbors, but through knowledge the righteous escape. So this one's about community. So we're going to start to make a transition into some of these. You ever seen someone give people good advice? Always seems to work out well. You ever been to a city council meeting? Oh, if you haven't, you should go. Ooh, that's the modern equivalent to tomato throwing at people as they walk down the village street. And every now and again, someone will get up and give some very wise advice, both to the residents of the community and the council, if they could only both accept it. And it's wonderful to watch, because everybody acknowledges it. All of a sudden, heads start going up and down. Everybody's like, yeah, that makes sense. That's the perfect solution. And then everybody leaves.
Isn't that through the blessing of the upright, a city is exalted, but by the mouth
Boom.
of the wicked it is
Yes.
destroyed?
And so that brings us into the next one, right? Through the blessing of the upright, a city is exalted, but by the mouth of the wicked it is destroyed. So we're transitioning into some of these community-based descriptions, because remember, For a righteous person, we reflect our relationship with God through our relationship with others. And there are a couple of levels, right? I have my relationship with God, I have my relationship with family, and I have my relationship with community. And Solomon never lets anyone off the hook for that. And we tend to forget that one. We kind of hand wave it away. And so we're supposed to build a very, I hesitate to say the word Christian community because I don't want you to get that confused with politics. They're absolutely separate. There's no overlap between politics and religion. Not in Scripture. Be a citizen of wherever you are a Christian is what Scripture teaches. It doesn't say make that community Christian. If you are a Christian in whatever community you live in, you will make Christians. That's the goal. That is Acts. Right there. It's everything in Acts. And Solomon is writing about it at least 1,000 years before that. What do? How do new people keep coming to the church in Acts? Because they see a group of people caring for, loving for, and protecting each other. That's it. That's the secret. What we do in here, they did out in the public square. And everybody knew there was a meal every time they got together. And everyone was invited. And because it was an open door meal, and we owned the agenda, we would eat, we would say a prayer. They weren't in the rigid order that we are. There'd be a prayer somewhere during the eating about the Lord, and then someone would get up and say, I want to tell you a story about a man I've never met who changed my life, as it was related to me by others. And they would eat some more, and somebody would say a prayer. And then somebody would get up and say, I want to tell you my story of how I met a man who had an encounter with a man I never met, who changed both our lives. And they would do this all day long. And the people would come and they would be fed. They would go away and come back and they would hear that they were doing the same thing. And they would go away knowing that everyone there loved each other and that they shared their resources and no one was there to judge anyone. How many times do you think you would have to come back to that before you said, I want some of that? In Acts, it was once. The first time they came. It was so overwhelming. Now realize that that was entirely new to this community. When we're talking about the Hellenistic Jews, this kind of public support had never been present. The Greeks were so fiercely independent that it had gone all the way over to the scale of, they didn't even know how to ask each other for help anymore. And so to have this just presented to them was amazing, life-changing, and it was. That's just Acts. You'd have to think about what would work here for us and then do that. Whoever derides their neighbor has no sense, but the one who has understanding holds their tongue. You ever been given the chance to gossip? Come on now. Have you ever refused to take advantage of the opportunity to gossip? You ever just said, nope, I'm out. That's not me. I don't want to hear it. I'll offer this. We are allowed to discuss each other and our problems. We are allowed to discuss each other's problems if we have been given permission to discuss them with others, with one requirement: that you and the people you are discussing them with plan to do something to, with, or toward that person and or the problem. If you do that and that is your intent, it is not gossip. That falls under the broad umbrella of help. But if you do nothing with the information and you're just glad someone shared it with you and you feel better about your life and your lack of problems, you have just gossiped. Congratulations. All God ever asked us to do was do. something with all of this. Have you ever fallen in love with someone? Do you remember that? And you wanted to do things for them, with them, toward them? You remember that? Some of you are looking like you're still waiting on it to happen, and you're sitting next to somebody you've been married to for decades. I know you have felt that. And I know you have done that. God says, why don't you feel that for all my people? Go find someone to fall in love with in a healthy Christian way. That doesn't mean that it has to impact the relationship that I have, because that's sacred and special. That's marriage. It's something different. But that is the definition of who your neighbor is, right? Everybody. And what am I doing to help them? You are as alien and foreign to God as a thing can be. That is how far removed you are. You are in His image. All those caveats, yes. And still He loves you. You could not stand in His presence without the blood of His Son involved in that relationship. You are so foreign and alien to Him. And He loves you. That's not the only way to define our relationship with God, but it is a way. Fred, you look like you got something.
So, Ray, can we actually love someone and be derisive towards them? And,
yes.
And I think about Jesus' definition of the most important, what's the most important law?
Right. So the first is love the Lord your God with all your
And
strength.
the second is the
like
same
that.
as the first.
Yeah.
Love your neighbor as yourself.
Right.
And how can you be derisive towards? And then he defines the neighbor as somebody who you really didn't respect.
Yeah. So derisive, I would say you can't be, because that comes with all the negative connotations about four fingers fully extended and joined that include, anger and talking down to somebody and belittling them. Derisive is a negative relationship term. I can correct. I can coach, teach, and mentor in all the loving ways. I can hold them accountable. But I can't be derisive. I can't judge. There are other things. So I think in order to have a healthy relationship, there has to be teaching, coaching, mentoring. I think in every encounter, somebody is training someone. Your role is to figure out what your role is. Sometimes it is to be trained. Sometimes it is to train. You don't always just get to be the trainer. Sometimes you do get trained. Any man with a wife knows this. And I don't mean that in a negative way. We ain't never lived with a woman before you. Your way of life is alien to me. What do you mean pick up stuff? Dishes have to be done routinely? Why do you think they make paper plates? I don't know. So we'll close out with the next one, because it actually leads into a gossip betrays a confidence, but a trustworthy person keeps a secret. Remember that. So we'll stop there. We'll continue on next week, and we'll close out the city verses, community verses, and then go on to the next group that he has. Any questions, comments? Okay, remember, we can go forward, we can go backwards. If you come up with something during the week, write it down, bring it in, and we'll discuss it. I have 10:18 by the clock on the wall. The gentleman from Kansas yields back 2 minutes of your time so that we can start our visiting early. And you can make your way back to your seats before someone comes in and tries to move your bag. I appreciate you guys all coming together. Thank you for your time.